Hey there, everybody. This time around, I'm here to talk about I Am Providence by Nick Mamatas. Yeah, now as you can probably guess by looking at the cover, with the tentacles and the name Providence in it, this book does in fact have something to do with H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, because, Mamatas has actually written several books dealing with Lovecraft. First book his I ever read was The Damned Highway, that he co-wrote with Brian Keene, which was a Hunter S. Thompson Lovecraft mashup that I really enjoyed and mostly got because I was a big fan of Keene's. Of course, after that, I picked up some more Mamatas's books, including Move Underground, which is a Jack Kerouac Lovecraft mashup. This particular book, while it's related to Lovecraft, isn't really a Lovecraftian horror thing. There's no tentacle monsters and shoggoths and all that other crap. This is basically a murder mystery set in the Summer Tentacular, which is I assume, made up Lovecraft convention taking place in Providence, Rhode Island. And I'm not, to be honest, while I enjoyed this book, I'm not entirely sure what all to say about it, but I've got notes, so hopefully I'll manage to say enough to say something vaguely interesting and people will watch this. Anyway, as usual, I will start off by doing a quick reading from the book just to let people see what the first page sounds like.
On any other weekend, my body would have been discovered more quickly. The smell alone would have tipped off a maid or some other member of the hotel beer staff within hours, except that the Summer Tentacular was in full swing, and the attendees of Providence's premier literary conference about pulp writer, racist, and weirdo Howard Phillips Lovecraft tended to stink up a joint when they manifested en masse. I should know. For years, I was one of them. Almost one of them, anyway. My claim to fame was a single book published by a small press. You've probably never heard of it, and I don't mean that in an arch, hipsterish sort of way. My book was a literary mashup of the sort that was popular some years ago, called The Catcher in Relia. Salinger's protagonists and Lovecraft's had a lot in common. They tended to be bookish intellectuals and were often driven mad thanks to their encounter with the ineffable. Banana fish, deep ones, just squinting they'll look alike. The authors were mirror images of one another, both recluses with cults of personality. Lovecraft, the anti-Semite, was briefly married to a Jew. Salinger, the Jew, was once married to a Nazi. Close enough to alike for me to combine via nucleic exchange and to integrate me into the small but intense community of Lovecraftians. Writers, fans, collectors, obsessives, and even the occasional religious entrepreneur looking to graft Lovecraft's squamous and cyclopean imagery onto a vaguely satanic nihilism.
Okay, now that, as you can tell, is narrated by, well, I don't know if you can tell, I forget now. It's narrated by Panosian. I assume that's how you pronounce it. He is one of the two narrators. Basically, alternating chapters are told by him, and the other ones are told by Colleen Danzig. Basically, Panosian is the deceased, and he's actually narrating all of his chapters from beyond the grave, because apparently he's still floating around and somehow aware of what's going on in the vicinity of his corpse because the brain hasn't completely decomposed or something. Never really explained why he's still around, and it doesn't really have to be, so that's not important. He doesn't have any direct memories of exactly how he was killed at the beginning of the book, which is good because otherwise he would spoil it right away, and then where would you be? He mostly seems to provide commentary and get and backstory, that kind of stuff. Whereas Colleen Danzig is the investigator, and not a professional one. She's actually a writer who's written her first work of Lovecraftian fiction and is attending the convention for the first time. And she's Panosian's roommate, and the last person to see him alive other than the murderer. So it's naturally she decides she wants to investigate because that's the way these things work in murder mysteries. there's always some random idiot who feels the need to investigate. But unlike most murder mysteries, is a random idiot. She doesn't. Basically, every choice she seems to make while investigating just seems to make things worse. Though eventually, in the end, she does solve the crime. Though we're never actually given the actual resolution because of the way it's narrated. I won't go into details because I really don't want to spoil things with murder mysteries, especially. Yeah, there's a few other things worth saying. I mean, the character of Panosian is interesting. He seems to be a stand-in for the author Nick Mamatas. I mean, personalities seem very similar. They're both, very snarky people who basically seem to be disdainful of all the geek culture and nerdery and the dirty, smelly, fat nerds. You know, which, that's basically, I follow Mamatas on Twitter and occasionally check out his live journal, and that seems to be the way he acts, at least that's his public persona. I don't know how he is really, because I've never met him. And that seems to be the way Panosian is in the book, though, at least his public persona. In real life, he hints that he's not really such a total jerk, but he doesn't have anyone very close to him. Other similarities, they're both also from Balkan countries. Mamatas is, of Greek ancestry, and Panosian is Albanian. So, and they've both written about Lovecraft, so yeah, I say he's fairly, obviously, at least partially based on the author himself. So, if you hate Mamatas, you want to be sure to read this book, because the stand-in for him gets brutally murdered by having his face ripped off in the beginning of the book. So, you can just imagine it's really Mamatas, and if you're one of those people who hates him, then you'll be happy. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple other people I recognize as stands. Well, one other person I recognized as probably being a stand for someone actually involved in Lovecraft. I'm not all that up on the subject. I read a few books on it, but I'm not a complete obsessive fanboy about it. But I did recognize there's the character of, and I'm almost certainly going to pronounce this wrong because it's a very Indian name, Indian. Banushali, I think. I don't know, I can't read my handwriting all that well where I have it written down. I mean, she is basically a Lovecraft scholar of Indian descent who's edited collections of Lovecraft's letters, is apparently an atheist, but is fairly conservative on other matters, in, literary tastes and language. Basically sounds like pretty much St. Joshi with boobs. Or was it Joshi? Either way, he's a premier Lovecraft scholar who's atheist, written and edited a crap ton of books on Lovecraft and volumes of his letters, and tends to have very conservative tastes in literature. So yeah, she's pretty much obviously a stand-in for him. The book does come with one of those standard, things at the beginning denying that, all characters appearing in this work are fictitious, especially you. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. I find that a bit hard to believe. I expect it's a joke because of that, especially you part. Yeah, what else can I say? There's even mentions to actual things that's going on in Lovecraft at the time this was being written. I mean, there's a reference to the old World Fantasy Convention statue kerfuffle thing, or maybe you don't know, but the World Fantasy Convention gives out the World Fantasy Award, which used to be shaped like a bust of H.P. Lovecraft in the style of an Easter Island statue head. Problem is, of course, H.P. Lovecraft is racist, misogynistic, whack job. So a lot of the people who aren't wasps, basically, were kind of honked off about it. And some of them didn't want to accept the award because it had, I can't blame them. If I was black, I probably wouldn't want an award in the shape of a racist dude either. Which, caused a big online stink last year. And this is actually brought up obliquely. I mean, it's not actually referred to as the World Fantasy Bust. Instead, it's referred to as a crowdfunded bust of Lovecraft that someone proposed and somebody else, didn't like it and gave suggestions that they should do a bust of Olivia Butler instead. Because that was one of the suggestions that idiots gave out of someone that could make the World Fantasy bust of it. Anyway, I'm off the track again. Yeah, the book also, of course, is something that will, I'm sure, annoy people, is stereotyping all the nerds. And I mean, basically everybody at the convention is a smelly, dirty, socially maladjusted nerd boy or girl who's so antisocial and introverted that they don't fit in anywhere else. I don't really know how true that is at these conventions because, frankly, I'm too socially maladjusted and introverted to even go to a stupid convention. Plus, I'm too broke. So, I don't know, but I expect that's something that will annoy the fanboys who go to these conventions. So, if you're one of them, read it and write angry letters to Mamatas, or better yet, read it and pretend that he's the one getting his face ripped off, and then you'll be happy. Because, even though I wasn't entirely sure what to say about it, this I've actually seemed to have said a fair amount. Except I haven't talked much about the plot other than it's a murder, but yeah, murder, Colleen investigates, everybody around her is a bunch of freaks and weirdos, and frankly, she's a bit of a freak and a weirdo too, because times I thought she might actually have done it herself, because she almost seemed like a lunatic at times. I'm not going to say she did it, I'm not going to say she didn't, I'm not going to tell you who did it, though she did eventually realize who did it. I think, despite the fact that I wasn't sure what to think of it, I actually did really enjoy this, and I think it's a really well-written book that anybody who likes murders, or even Lovecraft murder mysteries or Lovecraft should read. In fact, everybody should read it. Because I'm going to do something I haven't done yet and give it my full highest 5 gas mask rating. So, there you go. There's my review for that, and hopefully there will be more reviews of other things coming soon. Until then, don't read too much Lovecraft or you'll turn into a smelly nerd boy. Bye.
If you like this video, please click subscribe or watch some of my older videos. If you think the book I reviewed sounds interesting, buy a copy. There are always links to the Amazon store in the description for this book and any other books I mentioned. If you have any suggestions on other books I could read, or any other comments, queries, insults, or anything else you want to say, please feel free to mention it in the comments section.